Hey, welcome everybody. We are live. It is 6 o'clock my time, Pacific Standard Time, the only time that really matters because it's my time. And we have Mel the Scientist with us, who is relatively new to the GDC. And I'm going to apologize to her right off the bat that I have not had time to actually properly welcome her to the Great Debate community. But she's going to come in here and talk about basically her pedagogical and methodological approach to science, why science is important, and why she feels that creationism and ID do not qualify as scientific theories, or why they're not even science. And I also got Jade in here. So Jade, say hi first, and then we'll get to our guest.
Hello first.
Okay, and then we'll get to our guest. Mel, how are you?
I'm fantastic. Thanks for having me on your show.
I'm stoked. I'm really stoked. I've been looking forward to this for a while because, you know, I've watched some of your videos. And I'll throw this out there before we really get into it. The link to Mel's channel is in the video description. She has 130 subs. We want to get that to 200. To 200 before this ends. So
200s, isn't that like 40,000 almost? Is how many zeros is that?
Oh my goodness.
We got 6 zeros going on there.
Math in my head. You know, we're going to have to talk about Common Core one of these days at some point with the group, because math, the way I was looking at some Common Core stuff, wow, just doesn't make sense. But we're going to get her to 200. That's only 70, right? 200 minus 130?
Yes.
Okay, good. She's a scientist, so she can verify this.
I can math sometimes.
She can math. I love when people can math. Oh, we have one person subbed already. Thank you, One Clown Shoe. Okay, anyways, Mel, tell us about what you do.
Well, I graduated with my second master's in May. And so in the interim, especially with what I have been seeing in my background in education, both at university and on the high school level, we have a massive disconnect amongst adults when it comes to scientific literacy. And I actually talk about this in one of my podcast episodes. If you're not familiar with the National Science Foundation, they did a study that was published, I believe it was 2014. And essentially they were going through and trying to assess content knowledge, just basic science knowledge amongst adults. And one of the things that just threw me is that 1 in 4 people think that the sun goes around the earth.
I've heard that.
It's 26% of adults in the US think the sun goes around the earth. I made a little video.
How does that work, Mel? I mean, I don't even know how I could even conceptualize that. That's not a legit number. I've heard that as well, but
yes, it is a legit number. And I go through a bit of the numbers on my Hey Scientist Mel podcast, and it gets more and more upsetting to a degree when you're looking at the statistics. 16% don't know that the center of the earth is hot. Okay, that's 1 in 10, you know, almost 2 in 10, kind of around there. They don't know that the core is hot. They think, I forget the number, but one of the questions was, can you boil radiation out of milk? Some people thought that lasers, they didn't understand what lasers were, but the largest numbers came from basically not understanding the scientific process, not understanding how experiments are done, not understanding basic terminology. So what I wanted to do was essentially generate some kind of content that's not, you know, intimidating or threatening, or say, okay, look, here's a short video, just have a look, you know, this is on this particular thing that's going on in the US right now, like climate change. One study essentially about climate change, Yale did a study in 2016, and they found that 70% of Americans approximately think that climate change will affect Americans, but only 27% actually think it will affect them personally, which is kind of scary, because then that puts 73% of the US thinks it's not going to happen to me. And that's largely the issue I feel that we have with climate change deniers, or people that are like, well, you know, yeah, it's gonna hurt other people, but it's not going to hurt me. But the thing is, no, it will hurt everybody, because I live in farmland, and I walk outside, I look at the cornfields, they're all dried up. Our corn mazes are going to suck this year. They just are. And it's largely due to the fact this summer has been so hot. Food is going to get expensive. Energy is going to be more expensive because we're going to have colder winters. We're going to have hot summers. We're going to have more floods. Insurance is going to skyrocket. So a lot of adults don't understand. They need to know what science is. They need to understand climate change science. They need to understand, oh gosh, this will scare you. 48% don't realize that the males determine the sex of babies. So basic genetics people don't get. So, but this is all going to affect them on some level, whether it's in their wallet, or, you know, illness, or having a baby. I mean, it's just, and I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that adults don't understand the relevance of needing to have some kind of scientific literacy.
You know, if you take that and you extend it out, that means if 25% of the people think that the sun revolves around the earth, and we have 1,000 people in the Great Debate community, 250 of them statistically, well, it's kind of skewed because we have smart people in the group. But I mean, if this was a normal average,
you have to think of a representative population.
Yeah, it'd be it's just 1,000 people. 250 of them would think that the sun goes around the earth. I don't think I've ever met anybody that thinks that. So I don't know where they're getting these numbers from.
You know, honestly, I made a little video to try to boost literacy towards my YouTube account, and I put it on my Facebook page. I said 1 in 4 people thinks the sun goes around the earth. Don't be the 1 in 4. Come check out.
Don't be that guy.
YouTube channel. Please don't be that guy. I had somebody who's an undergraduate in history. I went and I looked at his profile because he was just trolling me. I'm like, what in the world? He's like, do you understand relativity? I'm like, oh God, yes, I did a whole video just on relativity. Yes, I understand relativity. Well, then you know, the sun's moving in relativity to the earth. And I'm like, I wanted to say sweetness. That's not how that works. This is, yes, we're all moving, but in no way is the sun ever orbiting the earth. That's not how that works. It's, you know, this away. He's like, no, you're just wrong. You need to go back and read some of these old texts. I'm like, you're a history undergrad.
You're a liberal arts major. No, none of you liberal arts majors. You know, that's fine.
No, not. Yeah. I mean, I have an arts degree, but I'm just, you know, I'm like, come on, just no. So I mean,
it's one thing if they say something, okay, well, we're going to do some, like, you know, Galilean transformations and maybe, you know, like decide arbitrarily to put the earth, you know, here, and if they understood what those were, they would have a case, but that's not what I think that they're going for.
No, and the heliocentric model, you know, we got the sun in the middle, but it has the largest amount of mass in our solar system, and we know how other things orbit and move around it. So we just kind of based on that. Plus we got all that data from what Voyager 1, you know, we've got all of that. Well,
some of them don't think gravity exists, right? To them, gravity is some weird thing that's relating buoyancy to density.
Yeah, I know. And then we've got like space-time. So I actually talk about this in my relativity talk in regards to like how space-time works, and that it's more like kind of a fabric-y thing, and we're learning more about it. But essentially, just like chemical reactions, you're going to have atoms and giant things and small things fall into the lowest energy conformation. And the lowest energy conformation is the sun in the middle and us moving around it. It's
conceptually pretty easy. Even if somebody doesn't know the math, or they don't know the science, and they don't know the physics, you can easily draw that out and show them, like you said, that is the center. That's the point where around the solar system, that's going to have the lowest potential energy there. You know,
exactly. The lowest energy conformation is going to be the one that it's going to go for. Now, if you want to kind of break it out of that, you're going to have some kind of energy to push it out the way.
A black hole could do it.
Yeah, a black hole
kind of trouble, but yeah.
But I mean, that's the thing, trying to explain things, and I find that there's a lot of people get intimidated. and I know I would to a degree, if I didn't have a basic understanding of a particular concept. And I think that's something that we see with certain science communicators. I love Neil deGrasse Tyson. I love Bill Nye. I really love Professor Brian Cox. He teaches out at Manchester. Next time I'm in the UK, I've thought about just crashing one of his lectures to see if I could sneak in and just like, yes, of course I'm a student. I don't have a British accent at all, but you know, I promised I'd go here. But I think since they're like, you know, Neil deGrasse Tyson's got a great mind, Professor Brian Cox got a great mind. But if you were to go to a Neil deGrasse Tyson lecture and you were to sit there and listen to, you know, his astrophysics that he talks about, if you don't have some kind of basic understanding what he's talking about, you're going to be too scared to ask a question. You're going to be afraid, I'm going to sound stupid trying to ask him a question. I don't want to be that person that asks the dumb question. And adults, I think that's a genuine fear. And also there may be a bit of this elitist type of attitude. They're like, well, he's so smarty pants, you know, I'm not going to ask him a question. And so they might think that Neil deGrasse Tyson wouldn't talk to them. So that's something you have to be approachable as a science communicator. And I think oftentimes some science communicators are intimidating, and they don't mean to be, because Neil will call out stupidity when he sees it, and he's not quiet. So
but he's not going to mock somebody for, I mean, if it's a legit inquiry, right, I think he may make light of it, but he's not going to mock it per se. I mean, if you ask him a question and you're a flat earther and you ask him something completely off the wall, then yeah, hold on to your hat kind of thing. But I mean, I remember when I was a kid, I was, I don't know, about 16 years of age or so, and I had gone to a lecture that was at the local community college, and it was on closed timelines. And you know, I was happened to be fascinated by that subject, and you know, black holes and all this. And I wasn't afraid to ask questions. They're like, who's this kid? But I got answers. I wasn't afraid. But I think you're right. I think adults are more concerned about image than actually asking a legit question. And I think, you know what? Ask the question. What's the worst that can happen? I mean,
and see, that's the kind of the kind of personality and persona I think I have, because I want people to be able to come and ask me a question without like, oh, she's gonna think I'm stupid if I ask this question. I had somebody ask me, I think yesterday, what STEM meant, STEM. I'm like, well, science, technology, engineering, mathematics. They're like, oh, that's what that meant. I'm like, yeah, if we add an A in there, then it's STEAM, and A is for arts. Wow. So, but I'm like, they legit didn't know, and I wasn't gonna go, God, you're so dumb for not knowing that. I mean, if you haven't
been in the educational system, if you don't have a kid, you may not know what STEM meant, right? I mean, my daughter's in one of her STEM programs, and she likes the sciences. So, I mean, my family, we know what that all means. But for people that don't have children, or I wouldn't expect that to be common, to be honest with you.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think you have to be approachable. You have to be, you know, kind. And I was actually saw a thread of this on Twitter today, I think, about how a lot of academics are presented as jerks in media. I mean, Sherlock's a bit of a jerk, you know, I'm talking about the Benedict Cumberbatch Sherlock. He's a bit of a jerk in that show. Sheldon is a little bit of a jerk in The Big Bang Theory. You know, so, and he's an academic. So you have a lot of media representation of really smart people that act like complete and total jerks. And you're going, this does not help. You know, this doesn't help the scientific community in being able to express, this is what you need to know because it's going to hurt you, or it's going to hit your pocketbook, or this is how you can make your life better. Not if it's coming from somebody who's, you know, got a stigma of being a giant jerk. So overcoming that aspect, even because, you know, having watched television and movies, the audience is conditioned. We are all conditioned to a degree. So when we see shows like this, there's like this unconscious type of thing that's going on. Well, you know, academics, they're all elitists, they're such jerks. So I think that might be a part of it. I don't think that's exclusively an issue, but I think that's not helpful. to a degree. So
No, but
I
there
have,
definitely is a stigma there. I mean, there are
yeah.
some academics that do have that aloofness, right?
Oh yes, absolutely. There are some academics that I've encountered that are quite on the end of being incredibly antisocial, to the point that, you know, they are jerks. But I think that's anybody in the world too. You're going to encounter people in any profession that are kind of like that. I just think sometimes it's amplified in the academics, in academia, especially in the sciences, and what we would consider the harder subjects. I don't know. I don't know. I think it's pretty. I hate to use the term harder subject, because things are always difficult until you sit down and practice, and then you get better. So
No, but there are probably, I would say, a few subjects that people find more difficult. I mean, I know people that just cannot do math. It's not that they're dumb, it's not they're uneducated. They might be brilliant in something else, but math is just not their thing. Not a problem, right? Or like for me, there's certain things that I just don't do very well in the sciences. I don't want to go there. I don't want to touch them. This is, we all have our little areas that we prefer, and I think that's fine. But let me ask you, which way do you actually prefer to like approach the educational thing? Do you prefer more one-on-one? Do you prefer them more in a teaching like environment, or do you think your videos? Because I think your videos, obviously, they're very. I'm not going to use the word simplistic per se. Even if I do, I don't mean that obviously disparagingly. They're simplistically simple to understand, but yet they get the scientific message across. Does that make sense?
yes, they're concise and succinct.
Succinct, yes, very succinct. Yeah, they don't go on for like 5 hours. I mean, they're like, I think the last one I watched was 4 minutes and 30 seconds.
Yes, I have shorter ones, and sometimes people actually make. And I should tell you, all of my videos, except for the really short ones, the really short ones are questions that I get asked a lot, and then like my Science Minute Mondays, that's just random ones. But the ones that I get constantly asked, like about natural selection or what is peer review, things like that, I make short videos for, to kind of cover them really quickly. Now the longer ones, all of those are viewer generated content. They all pick what it is that I talk about. And then every Saturday I talk about it. So I'll have to put together a thing in like 2 days before I'll stream live on Periscope, and then I post it on YouTube. But I let them vote. They'll give me topics. I'll put it in a poll and they all vote. And then whatever wins, that's what I talk about. So.
Do you get suggestions from your comments in your videos as well? Do you actually read your I mean, your channel's not huge yet, so you still probably have the ability to actually read most of the comments when they go on, because after a certain point, that ability goes away.
Yes. I still read the comments right now. And some people will actually say, hey, you need to talk about this next time. And I have a Patreon, and all of my patrons, anytime that they want me to make a video about something, their suggestions get automatically thrown into my polls. So they get like first row, first front of the line. They also get early access to my podcast. But I'll put in whatever topics. It's like one for like, I think it was 2 months, elephants kept getting thrown back in the poll. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to do one on elephants. And so just 1 week I didn't have a poll because everyone was like, elephants. But it was so close and was never winning. Something else always beat elephants. So I talked about elephants just because it kept being thrown back in the poll.
What was the question specifically, though?
There wasn't a specific question. They just want to talk about elephants. So I talked about the evolution of elephants, what their ancestors were, difference between mastodons and mammoths. So I just covered all that. I talked about dogs.
Did you bother to explain that if you look at elephants and mastodons and woolly mammoths, that if you have to explain all of them, trying to get from like 5,000, 4,000 years ago from the ark would be completely impossible because speciation rates don't work like that.
I didn't get into that. I just talked
Okay, because
about.
I've actually had to, I've actually done that with somebody. It was Joe Sonseed and I actually looked at elephant speciation rates and realized that it would require a speciation rate every other generation at best for mammals.
Elephants.
Yeah,
Wow.
because there's a 22-month gestation period.
See, I haven't gone that route with any of it. I've just stuck to this is what we have, and you can take it or leave it. So I don't really go much further than that when I get involved with, you know, trying the science communication and trying to educate people, because I have a diverse group of people, and I want individuals to be able to come back and feel comfortable enough to say, okay, well, I don't agree with everything she says, but I know she's going to give me good information. And I'll be like, okay, well, here's, you know, accurate sources for this. Here's accurate sources for that. Here's a good bunch of resources on this particular topic. So I want to be able to make myself available to people who may not agree with evolution. They may not agree with things, but if I know that they can trust me, that I have correct information, that's all I can ask for sometimes with certain.
Yeah, you just put out the hard science. Yeah, I mean, my channel, we have people come in and we educate, but I mean, we do focus a lot on debunking younger creationism, debunking intelligent design. And so there's a combination there between, we want to get out the correct information when people come in and you know, express something scientific, and we usually relate it on why things like intelligent design just cannot be science. I mean, you've looked into, I mean, I understand on your channel, you probably don't dive into that too much, but have you looked at intelligent design, and have you, I mean, would you say that intelligent design should be taught in the classroom in a comparative type thing with evolution, or that should be in a position where it is teach the controversy, right? That kind of thing.
Right. Well, I know for a fact in the state of Tennessee, you can teach ID along with evolution as a scientific option. It is not required. It is required by law for students to learn evolution, but it's not against the law for the teacher to bring it up. Now, on the other side of that, if a teacher spent time talking about ID, that takes time away from talking about what's actually going to be on the test. I actually used to teach biology, and I know what's on a lot of these tests, and teachers are not going to spend a lot of time talking about something that is not going to be on a test that's worth half of their evaluation as a teacher.
But you're right, though. They do bring these things up. I mean, you said, and I read your blog, you said you're from the Bible Belt, right, area. And I'm supposing that as you were growing up in the educational system, did you see teachers try to put forth their own personal ideological positions rather than actually teach a science? It's like you said, you only have so much time in a semester, or even a time in a day, and there's a lot of stuff to get covered, correct?
That's correct. I didn't hear a lot of that from my teachers. I heard more controversy taught in the church than I did at school. I didn't hear a lot of negativity or anything associated with that. And the standards, I think, were, I think that we still had evolution. We still had things like that. It just wasn't, not a lot of time was spent on it. They're different now. The standards are a bit different now, and there's more push towards evidence and less towards, you know, well, it might be this or that. They're very, very stringent, especially with all the testing that's associated with it now for these kids. So it's quite difficult. I really wish a lot of our politicians had to take the tests that they make these kids take.
Oh, I don't think they would survive.
They wouldn't.
I'm sure the parents. I mean, I don't fault them. Like I mentioned Common Core a few ago. I mean, there's certain questions on the Common Core types tests where the way they want you to do it, the method they want you to do it, is nonsensical. It doesn't make any bit of sense with the way they want you to do it. They're trying to get you to be able to make change to kind of groom you for a cashier position at some point, which is nothing wrong with being a cashier position. I've been in retail for years, but that they want to get you right into the workplace environment rather than actually teaching, I think, some of the fundamental concepts. Because like one of the questions was like, what is 5 times 3? And write it out. And if you wrote it out 5 times 5 times 5 to get 15, it's wrong. You have to write it as 3, plus 3, 3 plus 3 plus 3 plus 3 rather than 5 plus 5 plus 5. And it's just like, it really makes no sense to me that you're going to get marked wrong because it says what is 5 times 3, and you actually, instead of writing 3 5 times, you have to write 5 3 times. It's wrong. That doesn't make any sense.
It is. Oh God.
Or the whole, let's carry, instead of having like simple, let's carry this over and cross this out for simple maths. They have this weird like system where you had to like add something to get 99 and then subtract this to get that, and it was bizarre. And I'm trying to help my daughter with it, and I'm like, I don't even know how to do this, and I'm okay at math.
the way that they're instructing it now, I haven't had much experience in regards to math education on that regard. The only type of math education that I've had as an instructor or as in a teacher position has been in biology and then in chemistry at university, where we had to incorporate math. And once you start taking basic math and then you apply it to scientific concepts, people freak right out. They just start freaking out. Like half-life, when you're, I had to explain half-life in a way because I couldn't get the kids to wrap their brains around it. So I did this, I kind of picked on my sister. My sister is a little bit obsessive compulsive. It's not like heavy or anything. And so I taught half-life saying, I have an obsessive compulsive sister, and she will eat this amount of chips out of this bowl every hour. and that's it. She'll eat exactly half the amount of chips in a bowl. If I put 100 chips in this bowl, how many chips are going to be left after 3 hours? And so they could sit there. If I put it in a concept like that, they got half-life. But if I started writing, numbers on a board in regards to, particular isotope, and they're like, gosh, this is nuts. I'm like, no, it's just my sister. This is the number of chips in the bowl. We can kind of reverse figure it out, how many there were to begin with. By
you
how much
have to get into the mathematics. I mean, that's actually one thing that I do remember. It's the natural log of the percent over 100 divided by minus 0.0.
I didn't get into that.
The half-life, but you didn't actually like show them using that particular model, or did you just kind of gave
I gave them like a chart. I said, this is how you can do it step by step, because I wasn't going to try to introduce that type of math because a lot of these kids had only had algebra 1 at best.
Oh, okay. So this was like introductory in college first year?
No, this was in high school biology.
High school biology, okay.
Yeah, so that was high school biology, and then in chemistry we start getting into conversions. And a lot of people do not understand how to convert grams to kilograms. Just moving a decimal, but setting it up. They had such a hard time, and it shouldn't be that difficult because it's metric, but they had a very difficult time trying to do conversion factors or doing moles, just trying to figure out moles of things. Or
it's strange because metric's obviously easier for that kind of stuff, but we're being Americans, and we're so ingratiated with the standard system, right? I mean, I don't say how many inches or how many centimeters I am tall. I'm 5'11", right? So we're so used to using that kind of system, but I think they just kind of balk at having to go to the metric system. Even like you said, it's just a matter of moving decimal places at that point.
Yeah, and then you're saying, okay, now we're going to figure out how many atoms. Oh my gosh, atoms! We're adding science to it, and I'm freaking out because I've never had to count atoms in this way, with numbers like this. And now you're saying grams. This is it. Just they freak out and they automatically shut down. And I think adults kind of do that too.
We had to use the railroad track method, where you just take you would set up like a railroad track where you have a line, then you divide the line up, and you put the unit of you wanted on top and the unit on bottom. They would cancel out, and you could do what's like a little bit of qualitative analysis with that. I found that to be a very easy way to learning that particular way of conversion, because you actually look at it and say, okay, what do I have left at the very end? I have these units left. I'll just add these units up in the denominator and add these units up in the numerator and cost out this. And I thought it was a very good way to learn how to do conversions like that and conversion factors.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, I think, I know just a lot of people just freak out when they have to apply math to science. At least that's been my experience encountering people. If they have to try to apply some kind of mathematics to a scientific concept, but see, that's what physics is. And so people get scared over that too. So.
Oh, physics is hard. Yeah, let's be realistic. Physics is not easy. Let me get Jade in here real quick. Jade, because Jade's a science enthusiast, and she reads a lot. I mean, she's one of those people that's kind of erudite on every possible subject you can imagine. You name it, she can talk for 5 days on it. Yeah, and now she's quiet.
Yeah, well, no, the minute you said that, my sound just went, of course, because that's the way these things go.
It's Google. I told you.
I know it's
Google hates everybody. We hate Google. It's the way it is.
It's just something, because it's been pretty good throughout this hangout, except in the beginning. A couple of times it went out, and then of course the minute you said that, it went. So I'm back. I'm back. Yeah, I like to say, Mel, that I have a lot of knowledge about a lot of things, but it's fairly shallow. I'm a generalist rather than a specialist. So
okay.
I don't know things in great depth. I just know a lot of stuff. And I have a memory for odd facts too, now and then. So I'll pop up with something, kind of obscure, and some people mistake that for utter brilliance. And sometimes I let them. It depends on who it is. Yeah, sometimes it's fun, Oh yeah, sure, I know all that stuff. I'm expert in anthropology. Oh wait, that was archaeology, wasn't it? Well, it's the same thing. What something like that. You just spin it a little bit, but no, most of the time I'm pretty honest. I've been listening. Man, I love listening to you. I think you're a really good communicator.
Well, thank you.
And I hope to hear a lot more from you. And I'm subscribed to you now, and so I will be going back and listening to the stuff you do. And it's as you point out, it's very, very frustrating trying to educate people. It appalls me how poorly educated people are here in the United States on science. How they don't even know the basics, and will get defensive when you try to tell them that. They shouldn't ever be ashamed of not knowing anything. The things I don't know are vast as the universe, and I find that exciting personally, because what that means is I have this huge playground, and I really like that playground. The things that I start chasing down and go, ooh, that's a neat little fact. Let's go look at that little fact. There are some parts of the playground that are a little scarier. Advanced physics, a little scarier because I'm not well versed in it. I'm not good at the social sciences at all. I feel I need a guide, preferably one well armed, before I wander into the social science part of the jungle. But frustrating. I made a little simple video to try to explain why we say that a dog will never become a non-dog. And yet it's really very simple. And I pointed out that, well, dogs are wolves. Dogs descend from wolves, so dogs are wolves. And wolves descend from the Amphicyonidae, so wolves are Amphicyonidae, and dogs are Amphicyonidae, and so on and so forth. Went all the way back to eukaryotes. And we have someone in this community, and at the very end, I pointed out that, let's say, sometime in the future, dogs get very small, and their fingers elongate, and the webs between their fingers elongate, and they become able to fly, kind of like bats. And I showed a bat. I said, kind of like this bat here. And I said, well, they'll still be dogs. So we, if we're still around at that point, would call them something else for convenience's sake, because they don't look like what we normally think of as a dog, but they'd still be of dogs. They'd still be of dog ancestry. And this one person here on the internet took this to mean that dogs are bats and bats are dogs.
Wow.
Oh, and dogs are not eukaryotes.
Oh yes, he actually said, what was it? He said he couldn't.
He said that dogs have eukaryotic. We finally got him to recognize that dogs have eukaryotic cells.
Right.
But he didn't seem to understand that if they have eukaryotic cells, they're eukaryotes. he doesn't think dogs are eukaryotes. He thinks eukaryote means some kind of single cell,
Well,
like protozoan or something.
because I used a picture of one. I used a picture of a very a single cell.
We have you to blame for this.
It's my fault because I showed a picture of a eukaryotic cell. So he automatically thinks. See, the thing is, I don't think he listened to anything I said. I think he looked at the pictures. And the problem is,
go ahead.
Yeah.
I want to ask.
Well, I was just going to say the problem is he actually has people who listen to him.
Wow. Yeah.
So let me ask you about how do you get around like that when somebody has and this person has a small audience, not as large as a lot of people's, but he has a small audience, and when somebody says somebody to that degree of buffoonery, somebody who's that fundamentally flawed, we call it practically wrong, just completely potato, and they don't want to listen. I mean, they just continually say everybody else is wrong, they're right, dogs are not eukaryotes. Where do you go with that as an educator? I mean, obviously this doesn't happen in your real life thing. We have a little microcosm of the internet, but how would you deal with something like that besides just going, you know what, you just can't understand this. You're just incapable. And sometimes I think you have to throw up your hands after a few years and go, yeah, you know what, this person's just not able to understand this stuff. Do you agree as an educator that, or you really want to push forward and go, you know what, I believe this person can, and just feel frustrated and let down every time they can't get it?
Well, what I do, I actually have an image that I throw up for people who try to troll me.
So, these are trolling. This is serious.
Right.
Okay, I got you.
But I do have. But what I tend to find out are people who say that everybody's wrong. Everybody else is wrong. They're the only ones who are right. And they're like, well, I need to know about this. I'll give them resources and I will say, go and read this. This is the information I have on this. If they're not willing to read it and come back and ask me questions about it, they're not interested in learning anything from me. They just want to argue. Mm-hmm. And that's when I walk away and I say, yeah, you're not here to learn. If you were, I would help you, but you're not here to learn. And actually, it's like a huge list that I have. So if somebody gets to the point to where the arguments are circular, or if they're rude, or if they're not actually here to listen and say, okay, what information do you have about this? And I'll talk to anybody. But once it reaches a point to where they're not looking at what I'm sending them, they've not bothered to actually read what I've sent or looked at any of the pictures that I gave them, if they're not engaging and giving me good questions associated with that, if they don't understand what a word means, yeah, I'll help them. But if it's just random jargon, they probably are trolling. They're really not there to learn, and they just probably want to sit there and waste my time. And so I don't get in a lot of arguments like that.
Yeah.
There's definitely a lot of people that will troll, but there are people that they're not trying to troll. They actually are saying they actually believe some weird things, and they're just conceptually clueless. I mean, for example, hey, Jay, okay, I'm going to lose the entire audience right now, all 33 people watching, which is kind of light for tonight, but it's past 6. People in Europe are in bed, so we usually get about 3 times this. But so don't take it personally. No, it's not you. It's okay. The hour. But if you are listening right now, I'll say it again. Go subscribe to Mel, please. She's got a great channel, has some great videos. So if you haven't subscribed to her yet, link is in the video description. Take 2 seconds to go do it. We're trying to get her to at least 200. So
that would be awesome.
Yeah, eventually will after this uploads. Video will probably get about 1,000 or 2,000 views, maybe more. So we'll see. But Jade, go ahead and ask her the DNA question. Just do it. Just get it. Just like a Band-Aid, rip it off.
Does DNA degrade in water? Do the bonds of DNA break when you put them in pure water?
Only if you have magical leprechauns.
Oh, that's what I was
thinking. That's what I thought. If you had magical leprechauns, then obviously the DNA is going to break apart into its constituents.
You cannot prove that there's no magical leprechauns in there and not nucleases. Maybe that's really magical, leprechauns. And that's just, the remnants that we only see when we look. you know,
Well,
there's the uncertainty principle and all.
I will accept
because
that.
the uncertainty principle, bonds break. Yeah.
I
Lowers the activation energy, so
Yeah.
bonds break. I got you. I remember my basic chem.
But yes, they don't break in water. They can, those phosphodiester bonds can hydrolyze over a long period of time. As a rule, in the lab, what you would want to do is store DNA in a type of buffer where, you know, EDTA is one. And what that does is, if in case you don't have any, if you're not certain if there's any nucleases in your solution, if you put it in the EDTA, then that will go and it'll attach to those enzymes and it'll preserve your perfectly nice little double helixes for you to analyze at a later date.
Well, there you go. Yeah, that's. I mean, I'm not going to tell you the saga. I won't bore you.
Oh,
but there's a saga for 2 years about one person who's been continually telling people, and he. I mean, this has been a life of its own. That you take DNA, you drop it like a pellet in water, and it literally falls apart to tissue paper. The nucleotide sequences break apart. The hydrogen bonds break. The phosphodiester bond breaks, and then all these little nucleotides are floating around. And then when you move the water, they just kind of, reconstitute themselves and forms the DNA double helix again. It's like, can you kind of show us in an animation how that works? Because I'm not wrapping my head around that one.
Well, here's the other thing. Okay. There's likely water inside the nucleus of a cell where the DNA would be. And if your DNA fell apart regularly inside your nucleus, that would be a very, very difficult thing on your whole body, because then you would have rearranging all of your nucleotides. And then all of a sudden, I don't know, maybe you'll get weird stuff showing up on your skin.
So what you're saying is if you went swimming, you would melt. If you took a shower, you would melt.
I'm melting.
Yeah, we explain to him that still doesn't get it.
Yeah.
That's a shame, but you
funny.
can.
No, I'm not gonna lie. I a part of my channel is just lulls. I mean, just people, we're done trying to help them. I just make fun of them anymore. Because when you're on that level, I have no choice but to mock you incessantly. And my daughter's listening. Hopefully she is. Honey, when people get to that level, it's okay to mock them. Okay? But do it after school, not during school hours, and don't tell your mom.
I do have to say, when I get individuals that just reach a point to where it's just circular, like, you just proved my point. I'm like, no, son, I didn't. I didn't prove your point. So I throw up the David Tennant whats in varying degrees. And I actually explained this on Twitter, like, I think it was last week. There are varying degrees of David Tennant as Doctor Who saying what. Yeah. Like, I didn't understand what you said, what. This does not make sense, what. And this is utter nonsense, and I'm leaving, what. So,
he's my favorite doctor, although I love all of them. But I'm wrong.
But if somebody gets a David Tennant what, I'm at that point. I'm like, oh, no.
Well, okay, we have a bad habit in the GDC to sidetrack, like to really, really go off tangent. So since we're going to go off tangent for a second, I got to ask, what do you think about the next Doctor?
I love it.
Isn't it awesome?
Yeah.
I love it. And people, oh gosh, I'm thinking about getting a t-shirt that says "Man babies in my ass," because when the new Doctor was announced as a woman, I got a lot of backlash going, oh, it's just a token thing. And I'm like, you guys, no. Stephen Moffat has been trying to get a woman doctor for a while. I was like, here's an interview from 3 years ago.
They have been cultivating this and planning it for several years. And I didn't know it was going to be Jodie Whittaker, but I'm thrilled with that. But they have been. If you actually, you're obviously a Whovian. If you watch carefully, they're dropping hints throughout the entire last season.
Yes, absolutely. And so, some people are like, well, this is just, I'm never going to watch it again. I'm like, look.
What do they think? I don't understand that. I don't even know how to respond to that. It's like, wait a minute. this is the British, right? They don't care about racism over there. People are, if you're black, you're white, you're big, you're fat. Nobody cares in Britain, but they care if Doctor Who is a woman.
Well, it's also some American people that were doing it too. But I think that there were seasons that I did not like, but I still watched them because it's Doctor Who.
Yeah, well, I mean, I wasn't
what you do.
No, I thought she was not the greatest, you know, and I didn't like Peter Capaldi that much. But
I didn't like him until this last season. I thought it's just like I'm sitting here feeling like I'm doing the dishes. It's like feels like a chore for a little bit. And I'm like, okay. And I thought, all right. And then I'm like, oh yay, we got Bill. I really liked Bill. So this whole past season, she
grew on me, I guess.
Yeah.
But I mean, it wasn't until the episode where they're making people into plant food kind of thing. The smiley face, the emoticons.
Yeah, that was pretty fun. Yeah.
That was a good episode. But,
yeah,
I'm
looking forward to it. I think this is going to be interesting. I think, and everybody should just give it a shot. You know, if you watch it and you're like, I don't like the story, fair enough. But if you say I'm not going to watch it because it's a woman, then that's just a jerk.
But we know that Time Lords can change sexes. We have
the master.
Yeah, exactly. And by the way, I love her. She like one of my favorite characters.
God, she was great. She was a good follow-up to the previous master. I thought
she did a masterful job.
Mm-hmm. Give it a shot, and if you don't like the story, fair enough. But you know,
well, it's coming back on soon, so we won't have too much more wait. I think that obviously we got the Christmas episode, and then the next season starts. So, and I think I think she's coming in on the Christmas episode, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, I think so. I have to say though, my girl is River Song. I love her. Yeah. She's my favorite.
Yeah, I think that was probably my favorite whole storyline because the way that he was going forward and she was going backwards, or vice versa, it played out well. I mean, I thought that they really did a good job with that.
Oh, and as an aside, if you've not seen it, somebody took her last moments and compiled it with the Christmas episode, to where she's giving her last little bit to the David Tennant doctor, right before she does the plug-in in the library. And so they put in flashbacks from the Christmas episode and fill it in all together. If you're not like sobbing like a baby by the end of that, I'm just like, oh my God.
So it provided like some kind of a continuity to it all?
Yes, it's on a YouTube video. So you can probably find that. Somebody went through and pulled all of the Christmas moments from that Christmas episode where it was, the singing towers and all that, and plugged that into that particular episode, which was her last moments. And I bawl like a baby every time I watch it. I can't do it. So.
Well, I'm happy you're Whovian because I'm a diehard Whovian. I've been watching it since I was a kid. I'm a Tom Baker, and I just thought it was the greatest show ever. And then with the new remake, I was like, oh man, this is just awesome.
It is.
So I definitely recommend that to people. My live chat. In fact, we just had a hangout with Jade the other day. We were talking about shows that we would recommend to people and stuff like that. So if you just want to like hang out and talk about normal day mundane stuff other than science and science education, you're welcome to come hang out and have this like a normal conversation about TV and movies and stuff.
Sweet. I actually did. I did a show. I need to go back and redo it. I had two separate formats. When I started out, it was on my phone, and then I got better. And then I started working more with slides and things like that, incorporating graphics and things. But I did a whole episode just on the science of sci-fi, what was actually possible, what's really not possible. So that was kind of fun. I should go back and redo that one with my newer format, so it'll be better looking.
Well, you're going to hopefully have new people that it's going to be directed to your channel. I mean, I know we have a lot of people in the GDC that probably have not heard of you before. No offense, but no. You're relatively new on the scene.
I am. I'm pretty new, so it's okay.
You got a lot of Twitter people. How come all your Twitter people haven't like found you over on YouTube? You get like 3,000 something subscribers on Twitter.
I do have a lot of people on Twitter that follow me. I don't know. It's weird. I think since it's an international audience, and I have had more people start coming over to my YouTube channel because I haven't been as active with that as I was with Periscope. And So now that I can kind of, I have a better way of taking my Periscope videos and then uploading them directly to YouTube right afterwards. And so that's not, there's no delay or any processing issues that I had before. So now that I have more stuff going on with YouTube, a lot of my followers are now hopping over there and having a gander. So that's good. Hopefully.
I just put your link in the live chat so they can, because we only got you 9 subs so far. That's disappointing to me.
It's okay.
No, it's not. I mean, I mean, like I said, that you'll get a lot more after this uploads. But we have like 50 people watching now, and I'm sure most of them not heard of you.
Hello, 50 people.
39 right now. So
39. That's okay.
You know what? If one person's watching, it's okay. You know, some of these things we just do for ourselves. Like I just like organic conversations, or even when I do like a little math thing on one of the other channels I have, and we have like 12 people watching at most. And you know what? I don't mind. It's fine. There's something that I just enjoy doing, and if I figure if I'm having a good time, my guests are having a good time, the people in the hangouts have a good time. If people want to watch, well, that's awesome. You know.
See, that's how it's got to be. Now I use Periscope. I've had a hard time trying to stream live on YouTube, and I still got to work that out. But I usually stream live on Periscope, and the link pops up on my Twitter, and people who have the app can interact with me directly. And I've been able to get that pretty seamlessly. I was having some issues, but I worked that out. But I'm able to then put it up on YouTube. But I do that usually every Saturday morning at 10 a.m. I stream live, same time every Saturday. I'm not this Saturday because I'm running a 5K because for my Patreon for this entire month, I'm donating to St. Jude Children's Research Hospital, and I'm running in their 5K on Saturday. So any pledges that I got this month, I'm just donating it all to cancer research for that. And I'll do that a couple times a year. So there'll be another group, not the same one. I'll pick a different group. Maybe it might be environmental science type of thing. And then I'll donate a month's worth of my Patreon pledges to them.
A 5K. See, I could do maybe 5 meter. But
it's just 3 miles.
Yeah, well, I mean, in the military, I used to run 5 miles a day. I started running because I went on a diet last month, but then I did something to my back, and I haven't really been able to do much in the last couple of weeks. And it affected my diet, but not catastrophically. But I was trying to jog there, and I was only going a mile, and I was pretty well done. So I respect somebody that can do 5K. That's just awesome.
I'm not doing it as well as I had thought I would do. I was actually much better level of fitness earlier this year, but I was doing research and finishing up my master's, and that took precedence to my running. But thank you. I'm pretty excited about it. It'll be cool. I'm going to try to stream a little bit of the 5K. Probably not while I'm running, maybe right before and right after.
I'm just curious, you said you're having difficulty streaming on YouTube. Can I possibly ask maybe what issues you're having? I just literally helped somebody get back online that they've been offline for a year, and it's kind of ironic because he just literally 5 seconds ago put another video against me telling me how much of an idiot I am, even though I spent an hour on my own time in private with him, helping him to get back on the Google. Whatever, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, are you having difficulties where you just can't stream on Google?
Well, not on Google, up through
YouTube
Live directly, because I use my laptop. And so since I actually have a consumer grade high def camera, but my laptop has a better camera on it, so I use that instead. But trying to stream the same type of things that I do on Periscope on YouTube, the video's choppy. I can't get the frame rate to work out. The sound is off. It's just not very nice. I actually have a test stream, I think, is still up there, so you can go.
Are you running an encoder?
Yes, OBS.
Okay. Maybe when you get a chance, I actually run OBS too. I might be able to like solve some of your problems because I've worked out the bit rates and stuff like that. If you're getting drops, I might be able to lend you a little bit of assistance.
Well, that would be cool.
Because I use OBS too. I didn't know on my Sunday shows. I actually have a business account that somebody has loaned me, and we can get like 25 people in here, up to 25 people, and then I stream it with OBS, and it actually records the chat too.
Wow, okay.
But I didn't set it up for this kind of hangout because I didn't know if how many people were going to join. I only had like 1 or 2 people respond. Now I find out people like, oh, okay, I want to come in, but I'm like, whatever. I like this whole, you and Jade and I kind of thing right now.
Yeah, that'd be cool. Yeah, you can just message me or hit me up or something, and that would be great.
Jade, are you still with us? Where did she go? Well, let's see if anybody got any questions.
No, I'm here.
Oh, okay.
I'm here. It just took me a while to unmute. Yeah, I'm still here. Still here.
Yeah.
I'm listening. I'm feeling much better, by the way. Just one of those miserable days, and feeling a lot better now.
That's good. Yeah, being miserable sucks.
I know. But,
it's not fun.
No, listening to a good conversation helps. So.
Well, I mean, I've noticed whenever we start talking about science, I don't know. I'm just fascinated by it. I happen to have liked science since I was a kid. It doesn't matter really what branch. I find that all of it has some interest because I think there's a consilience between all branches of science. I think that in order to have a harmonious outlook on the universe, you have to understand that there's a relationship between all branches, and you're never going to have some branch that's so wildly discordant with some other branch, right? You're never going to have something that says, oh, well, I will do radiometric dating and the Earth is 4.5 billion years, but in astronomy, you know what? The creation disk only happened, like 7,000 years ago. You're never going to have something that's kind of a disconnect, right? There's always a relationship between every branch of science, and when you learn something about one, it starts kind of getting into another branch, and then that kind of gets you into another branch, and you can never reach the end of it because there's just no one person can know that much about science. I mean, that's why people have specializations, right?
That's true. It's always quite sobering. If you've never been to a scientific conference, if you ever go, those are always a lot of fun, especially when you get people that will give a talk. The questions at the end, because they just try to rip you a new one, and it's always quite sobering to find somebody who's like super giant in a field, in a particular field, and you're just like, I just feel so stupid right now. So it's like you'll be talking to this person and they'll say things to you, and you might have read, I don't know, maybe 10 of their papers or something, and you're standing there and they're saying words, you're like, yes, I read, and you're like, I have no idea what he's saying to me right now. I'm just gonna nod.
I pretty much like that about 90% of the time in the great debate community. So I totally get what you're saying. I have people, especially when it comes to like philosophy, some of the more advanced concepts, or when they start talking about advanced concepts of biology, I'm just like, yeah, sure, I'm gonna have, you know what, totally agree with you. I have no idea what the hell you just said.
Yeah, the more I learn, the stupider I feel. That's a legitimate thing.
Well, you kind of realize there's so much more that you don't know, right? I mean, you look into one thing and you can spend 5 hours just even going down that one little road of inquiry, right? But we have a question from the audience, so is that cool?
Okay.
All right, ready? This is from Barney. Ask Mel what is the most unintuitive thing she knows about in science. I like that question.
Unintuitive?
Yeah. What's it?
Like something that I wouldn't just know from intuition. Is that what we mean?
Yeah, if I had to answer, like the most unintuitive thing I have ever dealt with when trying to explain to people, like, because we're talking about this pedagogical approach, the Monty Hall problem, right? The Monty Hall problem is so unintuitive until you actually look at the enumerations and you actually show somebody, you break it down to them, and even then there are still those few holdouts that are just like, no, it doesn't matter. It's 50-50. It's never better to switch. And then, you finally get the light bulb to turn on, but it's a very, very unintuitive type problem.
Okay. For me, that was probably be
or
space time. I could not, and I'll just be honest, I have a video on relativity. I understood relativity. I even read the book by Professor Brian Cox. It's essentially E equals MC squared in Why Do We Care or something like that. It's essentially, it's an entire book on the derivation of the equation. So I read that and trying to wrap my brain around space-time until I just sat down and just drew it out, read all I could about just space-time by itself, and saw the rubber sheet explanation. Then I was like, oh, that's what that is. And do you know the rubber sheet experiment?
I mean, are you talking about like as far as stretching the rubber sheet?
Okay, I'll explain it. I'll explain it to you. It's if you can imagine a rubber sheet like a trampoline.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And you put like a heavy ball in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And you put little balls all around it. Those little balls are going to fall, as we had mentioned before, into the lowest energy conformation, which happens to be a particular orbit, right?
Correct.
So if you imagine space-time as the rubber sheet that the big giant ball sits in, and that all of these other little balls are planets, our big giant ball is the sun, and all these other little all these little balls are other planets, that's kind of how space-time works, like the space fabric of the Earth.
Oh, you were going far more simple than I was. Like I was thinking that you're talking about like, you know, the expansion of space time, dark energy. I thought you were going to go into like Minkowski diagrams, Minkowski space, and the Lorentzian models. And I'm like, oh, she's just talking about a flat. She's talking about regular, just a simple model. Okay.
I'm
way overthinking this stuff because I mean, I love relativity. So I mean, yeah, I'm familiar with what you're talking about.
Right. So it took me forever to wrap my head around that concept. I mean, I watched the show Genius. I've read this book. I'm like, God, what the heck? Why can't I sort this out?
A really good way of thinking about it, and maybe you can apply this. Okay, the little rubber two-dimensional plane that you're talking about, right? Just imagine another one above that, and each one is a cross section on a three-dimensional level. So every time you're taking a cross section, you're looking at the potential. Right, because that's what's actually happening. Gravity is literally a low point of potential in space-time. If you think of time as a one-dimensional, as a one unit, space-time is a combined thing, right? There's other ways of looking at it where you have three spatial dimensions and one temporal, which is like a Lorentzian model. But we tend to think of it as combined space-time, right? That's one thing. And I just think of it as each one of those rubber sheets can be stacked upon each other. And if you kind of if you can try to visualize it in a 3D way, you can actually see that it kind of does bend toward the gravitational force. And so it's basically just it's just bending. That's all it is. Matter of fact,
it's just bending. It's like a giant trampoline.
Yes, right. Exactly.
With a bowling ball in the middle.
You make things so simple. This is why I don't teach this stuff. I tend to overcomplicate this stuff. I don't know.
That's why that's what it took for it to sit in my head, because I had looked at all the math. I'm just like, no. And I'm like, rubber sheet. That's what it is. Now the math makes sense. So.
And the rubber sheet can stretch too, right? Because obviously we're expanding and accelerating. So
yes. I did a short on dark energy. So I need to do one on dark matter because I said I would. So I've still got to do that. But yeah, so yeah, that was just I just had no clue in my head. I couldn't wrap, and it's bothered me for like probably a year. So when someone is like, do a talk on relativity, and that one, I'm like, wow, I guess I better figure out space-time. So,
well, I would think like the twin paradox is kind of unintuitive.
Yeah. But
that's what other questions. Jay, do you got any questions too? You're in here. And by the way, anybody wants to come in, they can message me, but nobody's messaged me. I thought that a lot more people would want to come in, but they're all just chilling up there.
It's all right. They can come in. They can chill.
So let's see what some questions here.
I'm only a pirate on like every second Tuesday of the month, so I'm not in pirate mode right now.
Arrgh!
Avast, and I'm going to pull out my swashbuckling, sword, and I have a gun. No, I don't. I'm not a pirate, really.
Well, I mean, I don't know if I could. You know what? I don't know if I should ask this. I mean, this is the great debate community. The great debate community deals with all kinds of things, not just science. We deal with philosophy. We deal with mathematics. We deal with theology. And somebody had actually, they asked me a question. What's your position on the existence of gods? But I don't know if that's really a fair question. I mean, I don't know. I mean, do you have any theological things that you're willing to discuss at all? Or is that just not of interest to you?
I try not to go too much that route because of the fact I don't want to alienate people.
Right. That's why I was kind of concerned. I've read your blog, and that's why I was. So I do my research on my guests coming in.
Well, I appreciate you reading my blog. I mean, I will say that we have no evidence that God exists. But at the same time, I understand that a lot of people feel faith is very real to them, and it's a big part of their lives. And so to an extent, if you're wanting to educate people, you have to be willing to respect that aspect of who they are, because it's very painful for people to have to accept that somebody has lied.
It's a harsh realization. And again, I'm not necessarily even talking about the God claim, because I'm an agnostic. I'm a temporal agnostic, and Jade's a Catholic, so she's a Christian. And so I have no interest in the God debate when it comes to does God exist or not. People don't really understand that about me. I'm an apatheist online. I've said it numerous times. They don't know what I mean by that. It means I don't care whether God exists or not. That's not really the argument that I like to have, right? The argument is, do you have a rational argument to present? And the science supersedes whatever your religious belief is. I don't care what it is. If the science says that you're wrong, you're wrong. I mean, there's just no other way about it. That's my approach. And you're right. A lot of people have a hard time accepting that, right? Because they've been ingrained and indoctrinated that, you know what, they cannot be wrong. So they have, look at this has been told their entire life. It has to be this way. And then they go to college and they go, wait a minute. What? No, wait, this can't be right. Then they look at the numbers, they look at the evidence, and they go, well, yeah, I've been lied to, obviously.
Yeah. I mean, and it needn't be at odds with one another.
Nope.
That's the thing. It doesn't need to be at odds with one another. It's just it's highly individual and extremely specific. That's kind of what faith is supposed to be, and it's supposed to be for each individual person how that is for you. But science is not that. Science is, this is what the numbers say. I can sit here and hope all day that an experiment that I run is going to give me the results that I want, but that's not really my hope. Is not going to change anything if I didn't put in a solvent right, if I have a setting off, if I, that's going to affect it. But me sitting here and hoping that it works and having faith that it'll work, that's irrelevant to science. You either do it or you don't. That's how it goes. And it comes out in the wash every time. I've been wrong a lot. And so I sat there and had to redo. The last bit of research I did was in computational chemistry, where we were looking at ligand and receptor interactions for a particular receptor that's highly expressed in breast cancer. And I was trying to essentially come up with a protocol, because we had known antagonists, and those are essentially compounds that kind of plug up that receptor and kind of slows the operation of the process that's going on associated with that thing. Because that's kind of how cells talk to each other, is these are like little antennae that stick on the outside of it. And so compounds will go and attach, and then it starts a whole bunch of processes. Well, this one slows those processes down. And so we knew that these were antagonists. And so I spent probably 3 or 4 days trying to get my ligand to bind in the right spot on my computational software. For whatever reason, it was trying to hook up on the bottom, which would be on the inside of the cell. I'm like, why are you doing this?
You know what we need to do? Okay, so it's funny you mentioned that, because that same person that's talking about DNA, if you go to, I'm not kidding you go to any video he's ever done, he loves to talk about G protein coupled receptors. He doesn't know what they are. He has no clue what they are. He may know a little bit now, because I got him on one video, but he'll start talking about, transmembrane proteins and ligands. Oh, wow.
My research was in G coupled protein receptors. Yeah.
I would love to have
7 transmembrane domains.
Oh my God. he had said that one time and he butchered it, right? And so we were trying to figure out really what we kind of knew what he meant by it, but it was just the most weirdest jargon bomb you've ever heard, right? And he one of the people in our community actually he did a master's degree, and part of what he worked on was G protein coupled receptors. And he's just like this guy he's just spewing stuff, right?
Yeah.
And he honestly thinks he knows about this stuff, but when you ask him a simple question about something, he just says, "Oh well, what does he say? Come on, dude, what's a normal response that he has? Well, besides to kick you out of his room."
Yeah. Well, it's just usually more jargon.
Oh goodness! Does he throw out words? He goes, "Ballesteros Weinstein."
No, they're actual words, but the way he's using them is not.
Well, that is an actual.
What is it called?
The Ballesteros Weinstein labeling to determine which one of the 7 transmembrane domains that you're working with. I remember the 7 transmembrane domain receptors. Yes.
Yeah, but I mean, it's been a while, so I looked at it. I actually was doing a debate with this guy, and I wanted to catch up, and I went to learning more about these G-coupled protein receptors, because I hadn't had that since biology, and that was in 1993, I think. So I mean, what am I supposed to remember since then, right?
Well, there's probably a lot that's changed too, because some of them were considered orphan receptors, and those essentially trying to figure out what the processes are associated with them. So I was working a little bit with one that was fired off by LPA, which is lysophosphatidic acid. So it was one of the LPA receptors. And those particular receptors tend to be highly expressed in more aggressive strains of cancer. And it's linked to what we call cellular survival, because normally cancer cells, we all get cancer at some time, but our immune system takes it out, or they undergo cellular death, the apoptosis. So these particular more aggressive strains have a high expression of these receptors. And so when you have lysophosphatidic acid attaches to it, it prevents that apoptosis and that cellular death, and it keeps it alive. So I was doing research on antagonists that slow that process down as potential drug development. So
one of the things he does, though, Steve, is he just starts... He's got a lot of stuff memorized. And so what he does is he starts telling you all the parts of ATP synthase. Well, and then you've got the beta clamps, and then you've got this, and then you've got that, and then you've got this other thing, and then you've got the shin bone connected to the neck bone, and the neck bone. Wait, that's not right. Is the neck bone connected to the... Well, it doesn't make any difference because ATP synthase.
Does he know what it does, actually?
I doubt it. He also thinks it's a heck of a lot more efficient than it really is.
Well, he also thinks that because he doesn't understand and nobody else does, he thinks that ATP synthase is literally a thing that intelligence had to create, right? He doesn't understand the difference between teleonomic and teleological. And okay, the debate that I had with him, his reasoning is that he thinks that ATP synthase is like a turbine, which I think is absolutely ridiculous, because the turbine converts fluid energy into mechanical energy, and I actually happen to work with turbines. And I explained to him what a turbine was. I told a little bit about turbine theory, how they do the staging. And I related to him, look, there's so many more differences between an actual turbine and ATP synthase, and there are similarities, because that's a proton motor. It has nothing to do with converting a fluid into mechanical energy. If anything, it's maybe a rotary engine. But he thinks that because we can design a turbine, therefore an intelligence had to design ATP synthase. And he doesn't understand it's just molecular conformational changes.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah. And it's way easier than he probably is making it in his head.
Yeah.
I mean, you only need like certain conditions, right? pH, the right temperature, the materials are there. That I think people overcomplicate things way too easily, and they assume, okay, this is enzymes, they're so complicated, somebody had to have created them that way. No, we've just figured out how they work. that doesn't mean that it's overcomplicated. Once you understand how something works, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, all of Newton's laws make sense to us, but at the time before they figured everything out, everything was a freaking mystery. They're like, what is all this? They had no clue. But now that we know after the fact, it makes complete and total sense. The E equals MC squared equation, it makes sense. They're like, okay, this is how we explain this particular thing, and it makes sense. But before, it was extremely complicated and we just didn't understand. So I find that once people just actually spend the time and learn the stuff, they realize it's not so inherently complicated.
Yeah, no, the problem is you still have to have a foundational understanding of certain things, right?
Well, yes. I mean, but again, that takes time. You have to build it up and you'd have to be willing to learn the things. And I think that's where, like we were talking before, a lot of adults just, they need to know, why do I need to sit here and learn this content? How is this going to affect me personally? Because time is short in the adult life, and trying to get somebody to say, this is why you need to know what photosynthesis is. This is why you need to understand genetics. This is why you need to understand these little small basic concepts in order. And if you want to expand and get more broader understanding of things, we can do that. But just getting people to understand the basic concepts, I think a lot of it has to do with, why do I need to learn this? I learned this one time in high school. I'm never going to use it again. I don't have time for this. So you have to make it relevant. Why do they need to learn this? Well, I mean, I understand that if they're not going to be going on to, like, advanced studies, they might have a point. Some of that stuff probably will never come in handy. However, I'm finding that had I probably paid more attention in certain classes, I wouldn't have had a difficulty learning it now when I need to know it, because some of these topics come up quite frequently, and I at least want to have a basic understanding of this stuff. Right. And I just want people to learn basic concepts at this point, because climate change is a real problem. The anti-vaccination crap, gosh, that's like a health risk to the immunosuppressed individuals and elderly and babies. And a lot of these people are people who are on chemotherapy. They cannot get vaccinations because they're immunosuppressed. They don't have the choice. But these people who do not choose to vaccinate themselves or their children, they pose a health risk to other people. So it's just, a lot of these types of things are problematic, not just, for themselves, but it affects other people. Climate change affects everybody, including us and other people, but they don't know that it affects them personally. And that's why they're not bothering to learn a lot of this, because they don't know that it's going to hit them in their pocketbook. They're going to have a harder time feeding their family. And so trying to go that route is what I've been trying to do, to get people to learn a lot of the basic stuff that they need to know in order to make good decisions and informed decisions for themselves. And then we wouldn't have a lot of the problems we have right now, I think. But, if they want to go in more broader understanding and want to learn more about how ATP synthase works, yeah, they need to have that basic foundational knowledge. But
but do you think that this is okay? The average person is probably not going to know much about ATP synthase or electron transport chain, right? I think what this person does is he latches onto that and he tries to make his arguments sound more valid, because he's preaching to people that don't even know what DNA means, right? People like how to spell DNA. And I don't mean deoxyribonucleic acid. By the way, he calls it deoxyribose nucleic acid, and he has a master's degree, he claims, right? So, but he doesn't even know how to spell DNA, and I mean the acronym. Okay, so when he's throwing out these things about ETC and glycolysis, he's preaching to people that it just sounds good, right? And they're like, "Oh, look, at he's heavy in this stuff. He knows the stuff inside out." He's mentioned 4 things about biology. That's the only 4 things I've ever heard him talk about. He's as Hogtie Champ says, he's memorized like page 232 in a nursing book, and that's the only page he's ever looked at. Which is really strange.
Have you read the book? I'm going through it now. It's called Bad Science by Ben Goldacre. And he talks a bit about, and he touches on homeopathy, and also just pseudoscience. And I talk a lot about pseudoscience on my channel as well as on Twitter. And like Fake Science Friday, every Friday I just rip apart an awful study that's just bad, and I tell you everything that's wrong with it. And so he has that book, Bad Science. He talks about how people just kind of get starry-eyed. The more technical jargon you use, the more they think you know what you're talking about. They don't know what the words mean. And so if you're using all of this technical jargon, they're hearing it. They're like, wow, she is using these really hard words that I don't know what they mean. She must be an expert. That is a thing. That is a thing. And people hear these words, and rather than try to process, oh, is what they're telling me correct? They're kind of hung up on, wow, this sounds all very technical. This is just so terribly important. And, you know, they've got to be correct. They're not actually going through and looking at the data. And that book kind of breaks down a bit of how that particular phenomenon was used in some things that they were doing in classrooms that have absolutely no scientific basis whatsoever to try to get kids to learn better. And it was like silly little movements with their hands and touching their foreheads in places. I mean, there was no scientific basis, but they used all of this terribly important sounding type of jargon to where teachers are like, wow, that sounds great. And, you know, he's sitting here going, and other scientists are like, there's no scientific evidence for this whatsoever.
It's kind of like kinesiology, right?
It's kind of, you know, so, but that's a thing. So if somebody's on a channel blasting, hey, here's all these terribly important science words, and there's no scientific basis whatsoever, a lot of people just get hung up on that jargon, and they think they know that a person knows what they're talking about by using such technical language.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right on that. And that's why when we have people in the community that do know a lot about these topics, they explain to people, hey, you know, this person's throwing these jargon things up, you know, out there, but they don't seem to really understand what they are. And when you ask them for any great detail, that's where the conversation stops. And they make very fundamental mistakes. So when you catch them in a mistake, it's not like, you know, we're not like saying, oh, you messed up and, you know, you can't understand why you messed up. It's here, let me help you try to fix this. And they say, no, you're wrong. And it's very, very fundamental stuff. I mean, I was told, you're gonna love this. I was told that we were wrong. And that somebody actually said that oxygen gets oxidized, and most of the time it does. It is actually something that actually donates the electrons rather than receives the electrons. And we try to explain to them that's not how it works in redox. And of course we were wrong. And it's like no. And finally after 2 weeks, like, oh, he finally says, oh, I misspoke and I was wrong. But you know what? Steve et al. We're wrong too, and we're like, well, how are we wrong? So it's a little odd.
Yeah, I don't know. When I counter certain individuals, if they feel like they're right no matter what, I just kind of toss my hands up. I'm like, hey, if you want access to legitimate sources, because I think a lot of people, and I'll have people like the whole lady brain thing that came out with the Google manifesto guy. Oh man, I had so many people coming at me about that. How women have different brains from men, and women just don't get into computer and engineering. So I had people sending me studies that were so inherently flawed and extremely outdated. I just finally had to say, look, if it's more than 5 years old, I'm not going to read it. If it doesn't have a substantial sample size, I'm not going to read it. If it's, you know, so I had to
adopt something like that. That's not a bad idea.
That's unless it's like cited in textbooks and been cited like 900 times on Google Scholar, I'm not going to read it. If it's, you know, if it's more than 5 years old, and so somebody had said, well, I sent you this study, you know, and you didn't read it. And I said, well, it's more than 5 years old and small sample size. Well, you know, the Milgram experiment is really old. I'm like, yeah, but that's a textbot case. That's like a well-established.
Well, yeah, and that's one of the first things that people are learning getting into physics, right? I mean, that's more the historicity of
yes. That's not the same as, you know, somebody. And so anytime, and I actually talk about, I think in my podcast, how to recognize bad science, control groups and all that. So I go through a lot of that and say, if somebody gives you a study, this is what you look for. And if it's got flaws, another thing people that they forget, conflict of interests. People don't look at that, and they really, really should. Deepak Chopra, well, I ripped apart when he hasn't blocked me yet. PETA's blocked me. Deepak Chopra has not blocked me yet, and I call him a charlatan regularly on my Twitter account because he's harmful. He passes off. He does a lot of that technical jargon, and so I used one of his papers as an example, and I said, well, this is wrong here. This particular study was based on like 20 women, and they held it at his resort. So conflict of interest right there. And the people who ran all of the tests had received funds from him previously for their research, and he listed that. And the type of data analysis he uses, you never ever use it for any kind of analytical anything. It's more of, we don't know if there's a connection. We're trying to look for a connection. Use that as a starting point, not as an end point.
Right.
It's like Bayesian statistic. Like, no, you don't. No, that's where you're trying to find the connections, and then you generate more experiments to prove them. That was his end game. And I'm like, no, that's not going to work. And so, but there was a lot of technical jargon, and it can sound quite convincing, but I ripped it apart, and I'm like, this is what the problems are with this paper. So it's a lot of people get caught up on that. And so it's very important to be able to recognize bad science, but not everybody has that kind of information, which is why I think it's exceedingly important for more scientists, or at least more science communicators, to say, hey, if you don't understand something, shoot it my way. And I always offer that. I'm like, if you don't understand if you have a study you want me to rip apart on a Friday one day, hey, I'll see that. Let's have a go. And so I think we need more people like that to be able to say, no, this is a bad study, and I'll tell you why. Or at least better science journalism. We don't have really solid, good journalism when it comes to science studies. No, a bottle of wine is not the same as spending an hour in the gym. But that's what you hear. You hear that. Or if this broccoli can kill cancer, eating broccoli is not the same as squirting the components of it on a cell dish. There's two completely different things. This doesn't mean the broccoli you're going to eat is going to cure the cancer that's in your foot. That's not how that works. I mean, you can squirt bleach directly on cancer cells and they'll kill it. And you can squirt certain types of chemicals on there, but if you ingest the broccoli, it's going to, be subjected to all the enzymes that are going to take it apart. I mean,
let me ask you, people cite things like natural news.
Oh God, yeah.
I mean, if we agree that it's just cringeworthy beyond cringeworthy.
Yes.
I mean, that actually got. There was actually something I read where they actually ranked news sources, I wouldn't call it a news source, but I mean, places information, and that was dead last.
Oh God.
And so we actually have people that use that as a very, trusted source for oncology, and saying, oh, well, look, this shrunk the tumor, and it's, always water basically, but they seem to think that these, and I'm not against anything natural. It's not that by any means, but they seem to think that these B17 miracle things that there's obvious evidence that cyanide will kill tumors, if I'm not correct, right? Cyanide will kill cancer, but it also kill healthy cells as well. Yeah. So I mean, kind of defeats the purpose if you're dead.
Yeah, exactly. And it's frustrating. I often bust up Goop stuff a lot. I was actually contacted by a tabloid to ask my opinion of Gwyneth Paltrow and Goop. I declined. She sent me questions through the email. She wanted me to talk about what I felt was false or harmful on the Goop website. And then it immediately turned to my personal thoughts of Gwyneth Paltrow. I'm like, yeah, I do not want to get in a flame war for this. It just, no, thank you. So I declined. But I have openly come out and pointed out things that are exceedingly harmful on the Goop website. They have a particular blog post where they talk about autoimmune diseases, and they put in little parentheses, a simple cure, little question mark. You have to read the whole thing. It is utter nonsense. It is complete and total utter nonsense. It basically, the doctor, and I use that term loosely, who they have that backs up this, essentially he said that he did a study with, I think it was like 25 people, and he had them change their diet and injected vitamins into them, and then symptoms of their autoimmune disease were reversed. Now, he said he did this study and presented this paper at the Louis Pasteur Institute for a particular convention. I go and I looked up the convention. All right, I'm like, okay, I want to see this paper. I go and I look up this convention. You have to be a member in order to gain access to any of the papers. And the papers are only available online for 6 months, even after the convention. So nobody has access to this paper. Nobody can look at this study. He is just saying whatever. Okay, he's just saying this. He said, so we changed their diet and I injected them with vitamins, and then symptoms of their autoimmune disease reversed. Well, if your autoimmune disease is linked to, issues associated with your gut, like Crohn's disease, those sorts of things, yeah, you have to change your diet. And then guess what? Your symptoms are alleviated. But the way that they presented this, it was utter nonsense. They were talking about how plants don't really want to be eaten, and
oh God,
it actually says that. It says that on there. It says plants don't want to be eaten. They were here first, and so they're going to try to protect themselves. So they have coatings on the outside of beans that can actually cause you to get food poisoning. And they quoted a statistic. I went to the CDC site. I can't find anything associated with bean poisoning for food, okay? I can't find anything. All of the food poisoning I find is all bacterial related. So if there is outer coating bean food poisoning, it's not even significant enough for the CDC to talk about it. So I couldn't find the statistic. I'm like, I have no idea what this guy's talking about. I go through and I'm reading it. You have to scroll. It's like probably 8 scrolls to get through to get to the bottom where they have the FDA statement, of course, saying these particular, statements haven't been evaluated by the FDA, basically saying it can't do anything. But hey, you can spend $75 a month for their vitamins and it might be a simple cure. But that's the thing. People who don't, it just preys on false hope. So these individuals who will go and they'll read these types of sites are like, well, their particular regimen of medication may not be alleviating all of their symptoms. They read something like that, they'll be like, well, I should just go and pay Goop $75 a month. Maybe some of my symptoms will go away. Hey, I'll give that a shot. And then I looked at the formulary of the vitamins. You can get the same vitamins at Walgreens, 100 tablets for $12.
Well, that kind of stuff's been around for decades. So this is nothing new.
Well,
I'll just take vitamins and get sunshine, and you'll be cancer-free your entire life. We've actually had people that advocate that. And I'm just flabbergasted by it because, my brother passed from cancer. I mean, he had colon cancer. He had chemo, lasted about 10 years longer, and finally metastasized and went to his lymph nodes. So, I mean, I'm concerned. It's obviously wrestling in my family, but so far we've all been cancer screened and we're good to go.
Mm-hmm.
But, when people do get to the point where they lose hope, they're willing to try anything. And I think that these people prey on that. I mean, I have no question. They prey on that. They don't care if these things cure them or not, because they don't. The mortality rate is morbidity, I should say, is morbidity, right? I always get these confused. Mortality rate is from natural causes. Morbidity is from non, or is it the other way around? I don't remember. Somebody pointed out to me. But the people die because they don't get the right medical treatment. And that's why when we have this hangout next month on the B17 thing, I hope that a lot of people do listen to it, because as somebody who interacts with Kent Hovind. And I sent him this the other day. I sent him an article that somebody had got poisoned by B17, right? Mm-hmm. And of course, the guy that got poisoned, after he left the hospital, he basically told them, I'm going to continue to take it. Even though they had told him there's no scientific evidence that's going to help anything, and it's going to it produces cyanide eventually from the laetrile of the amygdalin. You will get sick again. He didn't care. And I'm like, Kent, how do you explain this? And his secretary had actually said, who I get along with fine, but she actually said that he was mixing it with other things, and that's what caused the adverse reaction. And I'm like, you have lost your mind. You absolutely lost your mind at that point. If that's the defense that you have to promote poison for a medical cure for snake oil for cancer, I mean, I always got along with the secretary, but I'm like, you're just beyond dumb at this point to me.
Yeah,
it's not mean, because I if it does, that's fine. I really don't care. I just tell it the way it is. And to me, for somebody to say something along those lines, well, he was taking it with other things, and that's what caused the problem. I'm like, that's a sick.
That might be a small thing, but it's probably not substantial compared to the fact that he's actually taking poison. And just
but Kent says it's not poisonous, right? He said, oh, you can eat it because all you want. Your body doesn't do anything with it. It doesn't produce cancer cyanide.
That's stupid.
People, and then they'll go this route saying, well, this is all natural. All natural does not mean safe. So that's the other thing. Getting attacked by a bear is all natural.
well, I'd like to point out that in my yard today, I pulled a very, very all natural plant. It's actually related to tomatoes. So one would think it would be good for you. It's quite natural. It's called deadly nightshade.
Ah, there you go.
It's all natural.
It's all natural.
Lovely little dark berries on it. Oh, I have some other really nice plants here. And they're actually beneficial.
You make a soup?
Oh yes, always for my closest friends. Beans. That's spelled F-I-E-N-D-S. I also have these other really nice plants here that are all natural, and they actually do benefit people. They're called foxgloves.
Foxglove. That's digitalis, isn't it?
You don't want to take too much of them because they have this what's that thing in them? They've got that affects the heart. Oh yeah, digital. Yeah, yeah.
So digitalis. Give her something.
Yeah, you meant. So, but I mean, I could go through my yard. I love to garden, and there are a lot of wild weeds here. Delicious, really wonderful, and good for you. You put them in a salad; they're fantastic. But then there's deadly nightshade. You don't really want to eat that, no matter how closely related to tomatoes it is, and how much it has those lovely little dark berries. I mean, there's lots of other things that are just really dangerous. When I grew up, and this was very common. Nowadays, I think this is astonishing, but a very, very popular landscape plant here in California was the castor bean.
Oh yeah, that's. Oh wait. Let me remember this one. Is it the shell of the castor bean that which produces? Oh god, come on.
Something incredibly deadly.
I know it's powder that's a powder. Oh my goodness, and I'm not looking this up. What's the first letter? Is it S?
R.
R. Oh, ricin.
Ricin.
Yeah,
see, that was in my head, but I didn't want to say the answer because I thought I was wrong.
Oh, we're wrong all the time. Just throw it out there. But see, I'm one of those people. I have it on my tip of my tongue, and until I get that nudge, right?
Yes, I know. So we had a castor bean plant in the backyard. It was very pretty, and I think most of it is poisonous, but it's actually the seed pod, I think, that is the worst. But I didn't know how poisonous. And where I used to live, there were, wild castor bean plants, lots and lots of them growing down by the railroad tracks, along with wild figs, which we used to eat all the time, and wild berries, which we used to eat all the time. We knew not to eat the castor beans because we were told they were poisonous. But so, I mean, it was a popular landscape plant here in California. And today, with all the fuss about ricin, it just kills me that so many of us grew up with this deadly thing in our yards without any idea about how dangerous it is. It's where you get ricin, which is, and how dangerous it is. And we have some poison hemlock that grows wild here. That's also quite lovely. You know, yeah, it's all natural. Hey, go for it. Oh, and don't forget, although there are almonds, there are also bitter almonds. One has to really avoid those. Anybody know the difference?
I don't remember.
Okay.
I don't remember the difference.
Yeah,
I don't either.
it's that stuff you were talking about before.
Oh, is that the is it cyanide?
Yes.
Okay.
All
no,
almonds,
it's amygdalin, isn't it? It's laetrile.
okay. All almonds have a small amount.
Yeah.
Bitter almonds have a lot, which is why they're called bitter almonds. And it was the bitter almond that used to be used to poison people. Occasionally, a wild, if a almond grows from seed, it can revert to the bitter almond type. But yeah, so they used to actually grow bitter almonds commercially here in California. I think it's illegal now. And they did so for the chemicals. But I dare you to tell the difference between a bitter almond tree and a regular almond tree. You can't. Which is, I think, why they made them illegal, because it was just too dangerous. People going and getting almonds and going, oops. Every year here in California, we have people that manage to either kill themselves or cause permanent liver damage because they got the wrong mushrooms.
Oh, wow. Ew.
And so, yeah, so natural, really? You want to talk to me about natural?
Yes.
You
don't need all these chemicals. Like, you're made of chemicals. I'm terribly sorry.
I know they have the stigma about chemicals. Oh, chemicals are bad. It's like, well, what do you think you're comprised of?
Well, if there's I wish I don't have it on the tip of my mind here, but there's like a website that says something like, what if like, our regular foods, fruits and vegetables were labeled like medicines are labeled. And it's hysterical because you look up what's in a tomato, and it's got all the chemicals. You look up what's in a carrot, it's got all the chemicals.
Yeah.
And it's scary as all get out because people don't understand, what are those chemicals? Well, some of them are just natural. In all the fuss about, we're talking about formaldehyde. There's more formaldehyde in a pear. On top of which our bodies produce formaldehyde. We need it for a particular chemical process. But the word formaldehyde is scary.
Yes, if it's a scary word, they freak out and they're like, yeah, no, we can't have that in there.
Yes, quit eating pears then. If you're so freaked out about formaldehyde, don't ever eat a pear. You know what? Apples are pome fruits as well. They might have it too. I don't know. I'd have to look. So, yeah, maybe you better quit eating it. Just safer.
It's just, I usually go the route. And sometimes when the anti-vaxxers start messaging me or sending, asking me questions, and they usually don't want to talk. They just want to yell at me. That's usually, I've never had an anti-vaxxer person want to have a legitimate conversation. They just want to yell at me and tell me how wrong I am.
Yep.
And so, I tend to have a very hard stance with them. So when they sit there and they're like, well, I'm not going to harm my child. I'm like, then you need to stop driving your car because you have a greater chance of killing your own child than your doctor does with that vaccine. Yeah. Well, they're like, that's not true. That's not true. And then I go a bit stronger route sometimes if they get particularly grumpy. They'll sit there and say, well, and they'll bring up the Andrew Wakefield study, I swear.
Oh, God.
And they'll talk about, well, it does this and he does this. And I sat there and said, he lied. You are basing everything
he lost his license.
He should be in jail.
Yes, he should be. I agree.
Be in jail.
He should be in jail.
No excuse. Yeah. For him to be walking on. It's disgusting.
Well, people have died for him.
Mm-hmm.
He makes me so mad. And so I asked these people, these parents, they're parents of children, and I'll say, okay. I said, so you believe a man who admittedly lied, falsified data, had his license removed. You know he lied. He said he lied, but now all of a sudden he's saying he's not lying. Said, all right. I said, I'll pose a question for you. Would you let a pedophile watch your children. Would you leave your children in the care of a known pedophile who said he was a pedophile once, but he's not now because he said that, you know, he's right. He's not a pedophile, even though he was taken to court and shown, yes, that he is indeed a pedophile, but he's telling you, no, now he's not a pedophile. Would you leave your children in the care of such a person? They're like, well, that's a pedophile. That's really, it's not that different.
Yeah.
You're putting your health of your children in a man that's a known liar.
Yeah.
Who's lying to you. I don't
He
see how
falsified his data.
He falsified
his data, and
mind-boggling.
some of his I want to say victims, you know, some of his subjects didn't even fit the criteria properly.
Right. And so
it's
trying
infuriating.
to get them. You almost have to push those buttons sometime. And when I say, you know, I'll ask that question, they usually just stop talking to me. They'll just stop and then they'll start yelling and they're like, well, it's just, and they'll keep tagging me in conversation. I'm like, you didn't answer my question. Would you leave your children with a known pedophile who's now saying that he's not a pedophile? Well, I'll take into best interest my children all the time. I'm like, well, I don't see how it's any different than what you're doing right now with this. You know, not vaccinating your kids. You know, well, what do you do with that?
Yeah. Another thing is they don't understand dosage. They don't understand parts per million. I have a site, again, I can find it again, which shows exactly that. Shows how deadly certain things are at certain levels, parts per million. Caffeine is far more deadly. Mm-hmm. And yet it's in everything. I have tea right here. It's in, I love tea. You know, it's in tea, it's in coffee, it's in sodas, it's in lots and lots and lots of things. Mm-hmm. Caffeine is deadly at a much, you know, higher rate than, or lower rate, however you want to put it, than most of these chemicals that they're putting in vaccines. But they go, look at this horrible chemical. Well, let's take a look at this chart over here. Let's see how let's look at how many parts per billion, parts per billion in there. Okay, let's look at the dosage of caffeine that's deadly. Oh wow, would you look at that right there? But the reality of course, we don't ingest enough caffeine to hurt us, generally speaking. And the other thing they don't understand is oh yeah, my mind just wandered off for a minute. I was going to say, well, let me go to something else just for a second. They don't understand how science works. I was going to say something else, but I kind of forgot about, you know, how your mind goes on a track. And they don't understand how science works. Because one of the things I keep being told is, and I go through this with them over and over and over again. They try to say that the polio vaccine really didn't stop polio because the death rate dropped long before the vaccine was introduced. And I have to explain to them, death rate and infection rate are two different things. Yes, the death rate dropped. You're absolutely right, long before the vaccine. But do you know why the death rate dropped? To know why the death rate dropped, you have to know what causes death in polio. And that's when the respiratory muscles, you know, stop working. Because polio can, you know, different muscles in the body will stop working. Well, there's this marvelous thing that was developed. It's called the iron lung. It wasn't developed, but our government and other governments put a lot of effort and a ton of money, because I looked up what those things cost back then in today's dollars. Whoa! So we put a lot of money into building iron lungs very, very quickly. And because we could put people in iron lungs, they stopped dying.
That's exactly right.
It has nothing to do, but at the same time, the infection rate was going up.
Yep.
But these people, these anti-vaxxers, these anti-vax websites will push this because the average person doesn't understand the difference. The death rate went down long before the vaccines. Two different things. Death rate, infection rate, two separate things. Death rate went down, infection rate kept going up. So you have to explain these things to people. And they sometimes they don't like it because they're depending on these people that give them all this bullshit. Because they believe them. They sound so sincere. They sound like they care about you. They're so sincere. And I mentioned this before, and most people in this community know this. The measles almost killed me. I'm 67 years old, so I was born in 1950. And my mom, when I was little, was afraid to let me go outside because of polio. So she had me like the front of the line for the polio vaccine when it came out. The measles almost killed me. My temperature was so high they couldn't record it because the thermometer only went up to 104. I remember this. I actually have those memories locked away because they're terrifying. It's like this door in my mind, and if I approach that door, I start getting really, really scared. And it left me with a permanent hearing loss. So don't tell me that measles is some harmless childhood disease.
Right.
When I brought this up in a Facebook group, because someone was saying, oh, measles, a whole bunch of other people chimed in who, like me, had been left damaged by the measles. Permanent eye problems, permanent hearing problems, lots of other problems. You can get brain damage from the measles. The measles can lead to meningitis. There are so many, all these people kept chiming in. And yet you still have these stubborn people who are going, yeah, but it's mostly just a child. No, people have forgotten. See, I'm of an age that, when growing up, we didn't have diphtheria or typhus or typhoid or cholera or things like that because that had been mostly eradicated. Tuberculosis, although in my family there was a memory of it because my grandmother spent time in a tuberculosis sanatorium. I always get sanatorium and sanitarium mixed up. Sanitarium, I think it is. Whatever, it's one of those. But so we grew up without all that stuff, but we did grow up with a whole plethora of diseases like whooping cough and the measles and the mumps and chickenpox and German measles. And we were all told growing up, if you have German measles, don't go near a pregnant woman, don't go near anyone who you might even is trying to get pregnant because it's so deadly. But we grew up with all these diseases and they don't exist anymore because, they still exist, but they're just not in the public consciousness because vaccines.
Exactly.
People today don't understand this.
Well, they didn't grow up in an era where they had those diseases that were ubiquitous. Exactly. I mean, back my uncle, one of my uncles, he passed away from polio, and he had the crutches, the whole 9 yards, and it was a big thing back in the 50s and 60s. Yeah. You don't ever see that nowadays, right? Because it was, like you said, it was pretty much eradicated.
Yeah.
But now there's a resurgence because I find that the anti-vax thing is one of the most disgusting, deplorable, anti-scientific nonsense that's setting us back and killing people more than anything I've ever seen. I mean, it's just the amount of people out there that do not understand the damage being done is overwhelming. There shouldn't be anybody who thinks that you shouldn't have vaccines or that climate change is real. These are just things that I can't imagine looking at the world and going, oh, I'm going to go against the entire scientific community because I think I'm smarter than they are. And I've never taken a single course in this stuff. I mean, but that's what these people do.
And I want to say I'm so proud of my state. I'm in the state of California because now we have eliminated almost all exceptions to vaccinations before you go to school.
There has to be a few exceptions. I get that, right? There are people.
No, there have to be. Obviously, there are people who have,
but minimalistically, yeah. I mean,
so in other words, no more religious exceptions.
That's crap.
Right, and if you do have a compromised immune system or something, you have to have a doctor, like a real doctor. You can't go to your local chiropractor or whatever, or your homeopathic physician. Whether you have to have,
a medical doctor.
A medical doctor. Thank you. Yeah. So we've eliminated almost all, and of course, people are, just outrageous because we're violating, their religious rights.
No, they're not. I take an umbrage to that. There's nothing about religious rights that forces them or allows them to abuse children, and I think that is a form of abuse, and to affect society in that way. There's nothing that falls under religious freedom like that. No,
but they say it does. Well, you're right. And the thing is, they have not won in court. They are not winning in court because it's a matter of public health, and that trumps your religious freedom, and it always has.
Real quick, I got a midnight sparkle. About midnight, by the way, midnight, I do appreciate your super chats. I really do. But I know I've had talks with you. You don't have to. Believe me, there's no reason. I'll read off your things. You don't have to spend any money to do it. Now, if other people, feel like they want to, that's fine. But midnight, please don't do the super chat. You don't need to. But I am really grateful for it. But Midnight Sparkle has been coming to my lectures on maths, and he's been learning. And you know what? That's priceless. I just love the fact he comes in and he wants to learn some of the math, but he's pretty good at it. He's obviously had maths before, and he's engaging. I'm enjoying that. So I save the money, man. But you know what? If anybody wants to go to Mel's Patreon, I actually have her Twitter feed in the links below, and she's got her Patreon from there. So drop a dime that way because it's going to a good cause. But he says, Steve, a lot of people don't trust science because they don't understand or are afraid. That's true. No, I get that. I don't disagree with that at all.
Yeah, I agree with that too. Yeah.
I want to go back to something else. Talking about not understanding science and not trusting it. A while back, it was a couple of years ago, and I looked it up just to be sure. Fiona and I and some others went through a paper on autism spectrum disorder and bowel disease, and this was actually a published paper. And so we were going through this paper, and it's on Fiona's site for those of you who are wondering, a couple of years ago. And as we're going through the paper, there was an Excel file, and I opened this Excel file, and with the data in it, and I'm looking at this, and I'm just going, what the paper's ridiculous. It really is. So this is autism spectrum disorder and bowel disease, right? And they had a group of people with autism, and one of the first things Fiona pointed out is there's no standard for who was saying they were autistic, how they were autistic, or anything like that. It just so you didn't even know what their diagnoses are. But and then there was the control group. So I opened the Excel file, and I'm looking at the subjects that had autism, and every single one of them was on a different specialized diet.
Oh.
And yet the control group, no information about diet whatsoever. So you've got a group of people who have autism spectrum disorder, and you're looking at bowel complications in this group of people, and yet they're on an incredibly varied variety of diets. How do you know?
Exactly.
You don't know what the factors are, and of course
you're not able to isolate variables in that regard. So causation and correlation.
Most people would not know to open the Excel file.
Yes.
Most people would not know to look at the data, and most people would not even understand what was wrong with that.
Exactly.
Because they don't know. And this is one of the problems. The other thing I looked at while I was there, and Hogtie was there too, and he looked at it. One of the things you do is you look at who is, who is referencing this particular paper, right?
Yes.
And I think there were 3.
Yeah, you can look at citations. Is that what you mean, citations?
Citations, thank you. So I'm looking at that, and Hogtie was looking at that too. We started laughing again because, basically, this paper sucks. So they're citing the paper to tell you it sucks.
Yes.
But there's only 3 of them, too.
You know what? That's a citation. No, I'm just kidding. It's pretty bad. The only reason it's being referenced is because, it's bad.
Right. So, and it's something I always tell people do is look at the citations. Now that I remember the freaking word, is to look at the citations to see, is this what impact does this paper have? Is anybody actually using the damn thing?
There's usually an impact score on some of them, right?
Yeah, yes. Or you can look it up. You can look it up if it isn't right there. You can look it up. So look at what kind of impact it has. But look at the citation. And don't just look at the number. Look at who is citing it. If you look at this, citation for even if it's like, let's say it's a legitimate paper by Georgia Purdom or somebody in the young Earth creationist community or the ID community, and they do occasionally publish actual papers, but sometimes they're not of great import. But then if you look at the citations and you see that every creationist and ID journal in the world has cited this paper, the little red flag goes up.
Yes.
Even if you don't know what the paper's about, a little red flag could go up, and you're going like, So what did they do? Did they actually write this paper just to get it published in a legitimate journal so that they could then reference it and go, look, we have scientists that published in real journals. Look at that, will you? And
It's probably not a respectable journal. I don't think.
It's open kind of journal. It just there's journals you can pay them to publish stuff. I mean,
what are they called? When you have to pay per view. There's a word that a phrase I can't remember, but where you have to pay to have these.
Oh yeah, those are considered predatory journals.
Predatory journal. Yeah. You can get anything published.
Yeah.
In a predatory journal.
Hey, Jade, I got to start wrapping this up. It's been 2 hours. I usually don't keep people for more than 2 for a guest. Barney, you dropped in. Do you want to say something real quick? And by the way, Colorado Biker Prep said he has to go. And this person live video, he said, great chat and thank you to Mel. So.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
So people are paying attention.
I wanted to say, by the way, just to give props to Colorado Biker Prepper. If you want to see a really great tour of the Ark Encounter, go to his channel. He's got like an hour of. I've referenced it before on my G+. He's got like an hour or so of where he wanders through the.
Yeah, he's pretty cool.
Ark Encounter.
It's great. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different channels we can. Definitely send people to. I mean, we have a huge collection of people in the GDC, and it's a great collection of people that I think want to learn. I mean, there's obviously people that don't, and there's people we do mock. It's not going to change. It's just after a few years, there's just nothing else we can do. I mean, I'll never mock somebody who's an honest inquiry. I'll never mock somebody that just can't understand. But when you have a channel and you're daily putting out misinformation for years of a level of just ineptitude that I've never seen. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, but not sorry, because I'm unforgiving about it. I will mock them because it's just ridiculous. But anyways, let me start wrapping this up. Barney, did you want to say something real quick? I mean, you got a split personality. Come on here. I mean, you got two things now, and neither one work. Can you guys?
Yeah, maybe.
You guys can hear. Okay, yeah, he's
okay. There we go. Maybe that's the problem. Barney, are you here yet? Did you make it?
No.
I guess not.
Yeah. All right, Barney. Sorry, dude. Next time, my friend, because it's just not working. But let's wrap this up. So, Mel, let's see what our total was for you. I know it wasn't as that many, but we're gonna try more. We're gonna try one more time. So I'm gonna put the link to her channel in the live chat right now. And while I'm doing that, you want to give your last thing here. And by the way, she will be joining us more. She's actually a member of the GDC now, and so she's not going anywhere.
No, I'm not going anywhere. I've actually have a website as well. It's called scientistmel.com. Same as my Twitter, same as my Patreon, same as my YouTube. It's all Scientist Mel. I do all of the content I have is viewer driven. So any videos that I have, save for a few short ones, those are all viewer voted on. I put together my talks, and they're available. If you're an educator, you can use it in your classroom. And on my website, all of my slides associated with my shows are there to where you can have access to them, in addition to the links to all of the references and the sources that I've used. So, and I also have a podcast on my website, and it should be on iTunes, called Hey Scientist Mel, where I just talk about all the different sciencey things. And I will have guests on very soon. So you can check it out and let me know what you think. And if you have any questions, I have a hashtag that I use called Hey Scientist Mel, because my @s on Twitter fill up rapidly. So if you want to drop me a line, use that hashtag so I can find you. It's just easier.
Well, I'm trying to get, I just put the wrong link in there. I'm trying to get your link in there at least one more time. Here we go. I got it now. So hang on, people in the live chat. I'm getting it to you as we speak.
Yay.
There we go. All right, here's your last chance. Go sub to her so I can give a total to her. At least bump her up a little bit. I'm hoping in the next couple days. Usually after a video comes out, it gets uploaded. It takes a couple days, a couple thousand people watch, and I've noticed that there's about a 1.7% turnover as far as subs. So if you do get 1,000, you get 10 out of it. It's great. You're up to 449 now, so you got some. Yay! Thank you. But anyways, it's not about that. It's about the fact that you were willing to come on and have a little discussion. And of course, this was on a pretty superficial level. Hopefully, when we get to to know you a little bit, you'll get an actual group of people, and we can start talking about some like really cool kind of in-depth more science. I know you're going to be back on next month with I won't give her name out yet, but there's a doctor that I know that has a doctor of evolutionary development or environmental development, Devo, and she really wants to come in and talk about this whole B17 nonsense. So I hope you can join us for that.
That would be cool.
Awesome. All right, guys, I'm wrapping this up. Thanks for watching. Everybody in the live chat, you guys are great as usual. I also have my Patreon as well. If you just want to drop $1 or something, that's awesome. I appreciate every little bit. I know we have a lot of patrons in the live chat. I do appreciate a lot. I'm in a good place right now, but I mean, if you, as far as my funding, but if you want to be a member just so you can see your Patreon, I'm cool with that. So anyways, guys, thanks a lot for everything. And tomorrow, I think we're going to be having the hangout with Reds. People have been asking me. I know they postponed that for his awards. I think it's going to be tomorrow, and we'll have Power back on. So to everybody else, I always give somebody the last word, and it's never the guest. So when I do have a guest, but Jade, since you're the only option here, take us out. Say the last word.
Can you hear me?
That's your last word?
Can you hear me? I think